Yeah, I'm going through the list of New World Pictures movies because Jessica wants to do a show on New World Pictures. She says post Corman, but I think anything post Corman, you do want to involve Corman to a certain extent because I'm looking, for example, like Shogun Assassin, that was during Corman, and certainly Fitzcarraldo was during Corman. I know you don't know the answer to this, but when did he close down that Venice studio that he shot Battle Beyond the Stars at? Was that like early 90s? Do you know what? Do you even know what I'm talking about? It's where he shot all of these movies there. There was this big studio that knew where that Corman had built, and a lot of people got work. I even think they had their special effects team there doing opticals in Venice. But do you I mean any idea when it closed down?
No,
You don't. I mean, but I don't know how you not involve Corman. But I sure would like to know who was running New World Classics or New World Pictures at that time. If anybody knows listening to this, if you let me know, because that's part of the history of distribution that I'd be curious about. Like, for example, I forgot that they had done Quartet, that movie with Isabella Gianni, and a movie called Christian F. What is this? L'année prochaine. So I mean, there was a lot of these art movies that they were doing. So I wanted to know who was running it because around that time you had United Artists Classics that was like 81, 82, and that was forget me if I'm wrong, it was the Sony Classics people running UA Classics. I think like Michael Barker, Tom Bernard, one of them, I mean I could be totally wrong. I thought one of them was like running UA Classics. And then the three of them, him and Marcy Bloom and Tom Bernard, Marco Barker, they teamed up. I believe they all up together to Ryan Classics and then finally found their home ultimately at Sony Classics for the last 30 years or so. But I'm curious, who was the one running New World doing these art house movies?
mm,
It's interesting that there's quite a bit of like these Canadian movies that fall under the roster, the New World roster from like 70, from like 80 to like 83. It's pretty like Murder by Phone, which is a Canadian movie. And you could totally tell which ones were ringing of tax shelters. Tax shelters was basically these laws like you could if you're a resident of Canada, you could invest in American movies, or you could invest in Canadian movies and write it off. So if you're a doctor and you had a $500,000 profit you made that year because you kicked ass, you could write off everything. So you had all these doctors and people just throwing money into movies in the 70s and I think pretty much through the 80s, I think. Then people started figuring out that a lot of people were escaping from paying taxes, and they said, "Well, this is not really benefiting us." The whole point of it was, we wanted to promote our culture and to promote the mediums like film, but it was doing neither because they were just dumping money left and right, regardless of what the movie was, because they just needed to show a write-off because of the tax shelter. Now, the United States, there were very similar, if almost identical, tax shelter laws here, but I think America quickly put an end to that quickly. So was the other countries like Canada that kept doing it, and I think there were, there'd be these scenarios where American money would somehow flow to Canada and then take advantage of these laws and stuff. But it just tells you like there was a time, and I'm sure it's still there, um, where there was this whole business, like I was saying on yesterday's show, like this whole business where people are making money in the entertainment sort of movie world, but not really on the movie. And a pure case is these tax shelter movies didn't make a dime, most of them, but yet in some form someone was making money because you had to have a Canadian company to flow the money through to make these movies, and the Canadians would say, "Here, I'll put 25% of my pocket of 2 million," and so $2 million movie would maybe make 200,000, but they didn't care because the doctor was able to write off 500,000. They were taking their fees. Distribution was taking fees. It was, I'm sure somebody in the government was being paid off because that's how you get these contracts. You wonder how these sort of governments sanctioned movies, um, were funded. Because it's sort of a form of gatekeeping in itself. Because for the longest time, the Unifrance. was the force behind making all of these French movies, and they were sort of saying, well, we're going to give money to this movie, and by sanctioning it, that meant it opened doors to other countries where it could be seen. Whereas maybe the better indie movie that didn't have government funding subsidies, it was suppressed, it was hidden. So in that sense, bureaus and organizations like Unifrance and like the Australian Film Commission and the FFC, which was the bigger film commission in Australia, just throwing left and right. It wasn't. It really was. It was a form of gatekeeping. Now a lot of movies weren't being made at that time, so they were gatekeeping 200 projects versus what? How many did Australia make in one year? I don't know, 300, 400, right? Um, but it still was a portal to legitimacy because the government bureau would basically sanction a movie, and so that meant other countries could distribute it. They'd have the foundation of the government to support it through film markets, festivals, and the film going the filmmaking bureau that was they're basically all government workers. It was crazy. Like you go to like these markets like Canon, MIFED, and AFM, and I mean, these aren't the cheapest markets to go. Just for you and I, if you wanted to go and get a badge, that's like 800, $900, right? That's just for one person. So these people, you go into like the Unifrance office, and it's this huge, full room chamber. I mean, easily costs you 25, $30,000, and then plus to ship the government workers here and everybody else, and these lavish parties that they used to put on with food and wine, and then the screenings. I mean, you're easily looking like a 250, $300,000 budget minimum, uh, for some of these governmental bureaus to go to Cannes. And it's funny, the thing is like government workers are the same no matter where you go, no matter which country, the bureaucracy, no matter what you do. And here we are, and like, maybe we were spending like $10,000 on an office, and we were struggling for every single dollar. And people would come in and say, "Hey, we'd offer you $1,000 or 2,000." And it was still extreme struggle. And then you see all these other guys, like the government's giving them 100 grand, 200 grand. They're just laying back in the office, eating, drinking wine, and eating berries and stuff. And like, they don't really care if they made a sale because they didn't have to, because the government had covered it. They just needed to show it had been exported. So basically, they would say like the Italians would say, "Could you please just take our movies? We don't care what you pay us for the United States. We just want America because it's the top market. And if Italy can show that it's exported these many movies to the U.S., then Italy gets these. We get these incentives back to us." And so it's all a crunching numbers game. And who knows how they fudged it? I'm sure they fudged it and said, "Oh well, we sold it to the United States and we took $1 million loss." And then so, these government bureaus were able to fudge numbers like that. But it was just crazy because we were working our butts off for each dollar at these same markets in Cannes. And we were staying in these closet spaces of apartments that were still costing $2,000 or $3,000. And you had all these people from Europe, living lavishly. Like there was this hotel in Cannes, I think the Majestic is the big one. And you just walk in, just walking in will cost you $200. I was just trying to get to the bar and have a cup of coffee after a screening and an aperitif because they're very good, like licorice aperitif. But then you see all these Europeans hanging around these room. I don't if you could get a room, because I think they put up the celebrities there. Like rooms were easily like 10,000 for the night, 15,000 for the night, something like that. If not more, because it was really prime time. But it was just funny, the whole uh difference in comparisons of the people that were there, but yet somehow everything intertwines. You find yourself intermingling because there's only a certain amount of restaurants, right? So you're gonna be rubbing shoulders with Mr. Guy from Spain, or you know Mr. Mrs. Australian, or you know
Uh,
Mrs. Spain, Mr. Spain, you know. And it'd be funny as as the days of the Cannes film market would end, because it's like a 12-day market, right? As the days would end, sort of like you would see like people weren't really happy. They weren't doing this is towards the latter part one, because I don't even consider it a market anymore, but this is towards the latter part when you know, there were some good memories left. Um, You'd be approaching like the final tail market, the market, and everyone looks so fatigued. And what's funny is like I'd always eat at the McDonald's, because believe it or not, that McDonald's was still like $20, right? So I couldn't afford to go and have oysters and shrimp at next door all the time. And they make this great fish soup. It's called soup de poisson, which just means soup fish. And they take like I don't know how many pounds of fish, and they just let it drain, and you get this rich soup broth, and you eat it with croutons and melted cheese, sort of like fondue. It's great, but they have that in Canada. It's so great. But anyway, so here I am like going daily to the McDonald's in Cannes, and like as the market's going progressing, and you see that business isn't happening, more and more of like these bureau people you see, you come to see them ending up at McDonald's towards the last days, and it was like, yeah, okay, they did. I guess they blew it on that first party on opening night. So, um, but yeah, I didn't know I was going to talk about this, but that's sort of touching upon what I was talking about yesterday, about the fact that, you know, that people say that they're making money on the movie business, but it's you're not saying, look, I made money off of this, you know, or this phone. You know, I've made money because I brokered, you know, I've brokered stuff, like I brokered the wallpaper for it or something. Or if you understand, if you understand what I mean. But no one specifically. And even and if they tell you, then they're lying. Because the moment you start analyzing their numbers and you start saying, listen, well, how many days would you work? What's your hourly rate? What did you know in the end? What does it count? But people don't think like that. Artists are just thinking like, yes, I want to tell my story. I want to do it. I do want to do it my way, under my terms. And a lot of people say, and I'll make $1 million. But I like the ones that say, you know, against all odds, I will do it. Give me $1, I'll do it for $1. Give me $2, give me 50 cents, I'll still do it for you know, for that. Like I know another thing is, I mean, like ironically, what's interesting is that we've now come officially to a DIY type of filmmaking, where basically it is do yourself. And it's kind of sad, because we were talking about the types of jobs in the film business that, or the film industry, that have just disappeared, predominantly in post. I think three-quarters of the post jobs have just been wiped away. The tape duplicators, the tape QC operators, the editors, the sound mixers, the sound designers, the Foley artists, all that stuff just thrown out the window, and it's kind of sad for that. So it is really DUI. You know, I'm doing my own music composing now. I'm doing you know, I mean, I started shooting my own films 6 years ago, right?
mm,
Um, I mean, heck, I'm even acting in some of them now. It's kind of ridiculous. Uh, but we're at we're at that stage now. So the budgets have become lower, so low that, you know, that if you do get a following like on YouTube, and you keep your budgets low, that you actually can see some sort of financial impact, but nothing like the dreams that those people want you to believe. And I believe it was this hook. I think it was a predatory hook for the better part of 20 years, selling everybody on this Sundance dream that you're going to make a movie, and, you know, it sells for Miramax for $3 million at Sundance, or wins the best picture at Cannes. I really think that was a dangerous philosophy and movement that followed. Um, you know, without having a bit, like I said, like in college, I think not only should they teach you the mechanics of filmmaking, storytelling, but also the history of cinema. Watch that. But I think they need to tell you really the business of and economics of films, because people don't get it. You know, I mean, I'll see reports for budget proposals, and they'll say like, you know, this movie will cost 1 million, and it would take comparable films like Oh, this goes back, but I mean, if we did comparable films like Sex, Lies, and Videotape, well, it made 30,000% then. What a return on investment. And what you don't realize is they had a distributor who took about half. But the Miramax deal was like they would take, I think what was known as the Miramax deal at the time in the late 80s and 90s was like Miramax took I think 25% straight off the top. Then that second gap, they'd recoup all their expenses. And that's basically what they ate into because they were lavishly spending when they shouldn't have. And then they were certainly marking stuff up, um, you know, overhead and stuff. So that second gap, and then once that was recouped, let's say it was $1 million or 500,000 of expenses of marketing, advertising, production, all that stuff, 500,000, then they would split that, I think, like 60-40, 60 to the filmmaker. So Miramax was always double dealing on that. But the money was good and people weren't complaining because they would say, here's 250, 300,000. I mean, are you going to complain? You're not going to, you're going to take it. Not realizing the impact of the long-term impact, the repercussions of doing such a thing. Like if you became a famous director, what would happen? But I don't think people really have the right to think of that. It's like, okay, if someone wants to give you money, go make a movie, tell your story, because anywhere you go, time isn't on your side, because someone else would do it instead of you, and they'll do it, cheaper, you know. Um, but what I was saying was that there's different ways now to navigate, and so all these different ways that people are saying I make money here, a lot of them have evaporated now because we're in this DIY situation, which is now great for the people who started in SOV videos, shot in video, because you have like Mark Polonius, for example, who started in SOV in the 80s, right? Him and his late brother, they started and they cranked all these out. They did very well for that market because at that time, as I told you before, video stores couldn't afford $5,000 a week on buying every single tape that came out, so they had to counter programming. So comes Mark Polonius, it was his distributors, and I forget who put his stuff out early on. I think it was like Charlie Band, like Wizard Video. I want to say that, I'm not sure, but some of those other companies, and they would do well, and these movies would cost maybe 15, 20,000, which that's a lot now, right? But small, tiny then, and they would make double, triple back. So, and they were DIY because shot on a camcorder, which he's known for doing, and edited, maybe even edited in camera. I'm not sure, but his story is told. Then came the tide of the what they're saying quality indie movies, the whole festival thing coming in, and a lot of those VHS companies evolved and morphed into different beings. Like some VHS people got out of the business, then DVD people came in, and you were dealing with a new mentality. So the shot on video thing, they weren't as many proponents anymore, but they still needed counter programming. But in comes your second generation, third generation of DVD companies that want this horror product, but they want it at a higher level, not shot on video. So that's when Mark, I think, Polonius struggles. But this is not a Mark Polonius show. And I actually haven't talked about. I know him. We work with him. I don't know him that well, but that's a whole story in itself, and I want to get him on this show to discuss it. But it seems to me that he would have had a rough period navigating that when film took over. And then the moment that digital comes in HD, especially now, and budgets are becoming smaller and smaller, he is the guy that's emerging at the top of the playing field because he now knows every single step of making a movie as a one-man, two-man team. And he works with like Jeff Kirkendall, who also makes movies on his own. And they're both like that. Like, I'm not even like that. I'm reliant. Like at a minimum, I need certain people on the set. Like I don't come from that world, and I wish I did, because more and more that's what's being required because the budgets just aren't there, but yet these we have voices we have to keep creating, but we're not, but at what point, do we keep creating and we're over the cliff, barely hanging on. I think the DIY is a way now to get out there and sort of have, a lot of your creative control that you wanted now, because now you're not really answerable to a lot of people. I mean, you're answerable to the content policy guidelines of Google and Amazon and Tubi, which makes it hard. But For example, like Poloni, he was never, maybe the early stuff, but I mean, his stuff has a market. People have grown to like it. It's not gratuitous, so it passes the content policy guidelines fine. There's nothing offensive about it, and it fits nicely into that cult category. And there's not a lot of people like him. I mean, first of all, it's a new genre that has kind of emerged recently. I just noticed this happening, and we're involved with it now, so I really know sort of what's happening. But like, his contemporaries would be, let's say, for example, like Will Colotz is a contemporary of his. Like Will's doing the same thing. One man shooting this over 3 days, 4 days, getting done quick. Same cast over and over. And I mentioned Jeff Kirkendall's like that. Evan Jacobs is this really unique, like he's like the Godard side of Polonia. He'll not tell you what he's doing, and then he comes up with this incredibly unique art movie, and you don't know why it works, but it works. Like, why should a movie with a man be on with a man on a cell phone for 90 minutes be interesting? But it works. Why should a movie where someone's watching TV for an hour, why should that work? But it works. So he's got that, and he's always been DIY. He's been DIY for 30 years. So it's great that these guys are coming back. And then what's happening is now that, because uh no one's making movies anymore, like like the distribution market, like there used to be, like, where there'd be a dozen movies, I'd say, okay, maybe this one works, but that stuff's not even out in the open anymore because people aren't making them. People got burned too much. The economic downturn hasn't really gone back up. I mean, interest went down slightly, but not enough to get us out of the red, right? Everybody, right? So yeah, and so I was gonna do a show. I was trying to think, trying to look up on IMDb. We'll do a show on this. Like, I don't even know what the genre is called. I mean, it's micro cinema, but what is micro cinema anymore? Micro cinema is anything under 50,000. Well, 50,000 is a big epic now. I forget what else. Who else would be mentioned? But I guess Chauncey Phillips. He's taking a crack at some of this stuff. I haven't seen it. Beyond, I mean, he acted in one of my films, but he's been actively making movies. And you have Thomas Churchill that's doing it, but Thomas Churchill works on a larger scale, and he's not fully in creative control because he has to answer to investors and Lionsgate. So it's not quite DIY. It is, but he's got investors, and there's an economic pressure, and so that certainly affects your work. I'm in that same boat too. I always have economic pressure when I'm making a movie. I have to answer to people, so it keeps me from expressing certain things because I'm responsible to the investors. Jamie Griffey is a combination of both. He can do a lot of things within a certain parameter, and like he could take this and push it and stretch it to its widest, but he'll never go beyond it, which is good because he knows what the parameters are. Or he'll do it like, here, we want this, and then do that. So what's happening right now, so you have the GoFundMe people, and again, they're raising money. I don't know how much is real, how much of it's not, but they're raising money, and out of that, they're paying themselves to direct and produce a film. At least I think they are. So this is another case in point where someone's making money on a movie, but it's not really on specifically that movie itself. It's all peripheral. So the GoFundMe money that you're raising, yes, it's for a movie, but the movie isn't achieving on its own. In other words, like, you're making it for 50,000, it is not making 50,000 back to you in your pocket, because everybody knows, well, if you don't, to get back 50,000, after all these middlemen and whatever advertisers, if you survive such a crazy market of viewerships that are ADHD packed viewers who are fighting, who you're fighting for attention against TikTok and also other thousands of forms of of entertainment. So yeah, so I was saying, like, on GoFundMe, so if they're raising, like, let's say 50, 60,000, and then they're making the movie for like 40, then they're keeping 20, which it's good formula. There's a lot of work on crowdfunding. If you have the stamina and the attitude to go behind it, great. I just think that dealing with people on a social world now, it's getting ugly and dirty and disturbing, and people don't know how to engage in meaningful conversations anymore without double thinking of everybody that's everyone's out to get them. So just imagine doing that, and that's why they're saying like a lot of people don't want to take customer service jobs anymore because the average customer is just so out of their mind now. They're so selfish, they're so self-entitled, they want it quick, quick, quick. So and GoFundMe to officially do a movie, you need to get backed by 200 or 300 people. That's a lot of people to handle with. I mean, Samurai Cop 2, we had like 250 people, and um, for the most part they were good, but that was 10 years ago. But just having the seminar, and if you're doing one or two of these a year, I get it. But some of these people are running 5 or 6 campaigns. That's a lot of people to manage. You know. I mean, maybe maybe if you like to be extroverted, I only like, I keep to myself. I talk to a few people, that kind of thing. So there's the GoFundMe, says the filmmakers are making money off of that. Then there's a new system, which is basically derived from an old system. It's just that the new system relies on pennies instead of millions of dollars. So what's happening is that since there's a paucity, a dearth of new films being done available for distribution, companies are now going out to these directors like Mark Polonia. Well, Jamie Griffey is our in-house director. Will Colazzo, Thomas Churchill, and they're saying here like it's either two forms, either the distributors saying, could you make a Popeye movie, or could you do this movie, and I want this much blood, I want this, and here's the budget. They say, okay, I'll do it, fine, no problem. And that's very clean. And then there's the other type of filmmaker that goes to a distributor like us and says, listen, for this, I can get you this, I can get you this person, I can get you this story, I can get you this mask, I can get you this location, I can get you this face. Here are the 3 menu options. And that makes it clean for us. We say, okay, we want one of option A and one of option C. I feel it's like a Chinese menu. We want 1C, 1B, 1A. So that's what's happening now. And it's keeping these DIY people in business because now for the first time you deal with and by the way, I do want to, it's sort of a program in itself. I do want to bring up the work of David Sterling because he's responsible for a lot of this, but it's a long subject and it doesn't fit into this context because we're about to wrap up now. But I will talk about David's involvement with these people I've just mentioned and his relation to the SOV cult world, movie world that then led on to, beyond from VHS to DVD and so forth. So, so yeah, so what's happening is that these DIY people are becoming very popular. Oh, I should also mention Dustin Ferguson because I think he's made like 250 movies. And I don't know his work again, but I think that half are, I don't want to say made to order, but it's sort of like I have a shark movie or I have a monster movie. Are you interested in it? If so, what do you want? So these people are becoming pretty valuable because they can shoot quick and they can supply the product flow on a budget level that the distributors need, like us. Um, I don't consider myself a distributor anymore because I got fed up with the business, but in some form I rely on it because as a film producer, and a film director, I count on my films getting out through some form of distribution to be seen. So whether I would look at it or not, I'm still a distributor. So how that comes into play is that, listen, I haven't directed a movie in 6 months. So let's say I had to do two movies. Well, I'm short 2 movies. So and so, I say, here we have this budget. Can you make it? And can you fill these gaps? Or can you do this and quick? And it makes it simple because they know how to do it. Now they're so advanced where they shoot HD, they know how to edit quickly, they know the sound. And a lot of these people, it's sort of incestuous. Like you could take the top 5 of these filmmakers in a category who I've sort of mentioned, and they've all worked with every distributor like us, everybody, Wild Eye, us, you name it, you name it. Um, so these are the people that are becoming very active in this in this new movement of what the indie film is, because no longer is it that you have to deal with the sound guy, then you got to deal with SAG or payroll, then you have to deal with this, all this. Now it's like, okay, here I want a Sasquatch movie and I want this. And the in science and research, the more you dilute, the more layers it goes through, the more it gets diluted. So in this case, when you say to Mark Poloni, like I want a space movie, it's not getting diluted by anybody because he's giving you the movie directly. He's not giving it to this guy, to this guy, to this guy, to this guy. Because when that happens, everybody has their own idea, and then you don't get what you want. Um, but at some point, merely it's for the sake of time. Can you get these movies done and quick? Can it fit this formula? And what makes it what makes it very erratic is that the the algorithms and the programming agendas at these platforms are constantly changing. Every year it seems like now. I mean, before I think it'd be every maybe 3 or 4 years they'd reset the algorithm, but now it seems to be changing every single year. And what's scary now is that we're now not only having to make our own films, but and rely on everybody to make them quick and fast, cheap, and out of control. But we're relying on a system that exists on revisionism, if you understand what I mean. What that means specifically is that it's never in a state of finality or finished stage. For example, I'll give you an example. I think one of our movies, I forget what it was. We put it out. It was approved by all the platforms. I hate to keep throwing Amazon, but they're the largest, right? So it was approved by all the platforms, and it had a fair level of success. It brought me some fans. It brought me some followers. And then, like 2 years later, they said, "Oh, this doesn't follow our policy anymore. We're dropping it." So what am I gonna do now? Lose my audience for a film that Okay, it's great. Great. I want you to hear. It's one thing for that. I'd be nice for you to see my expression and what I can do possibly on film. But secondly, me and my survivalhood, it'd be nice to get what little money I can get back. And by you cutting it off by just dropping it from your catalog means I have no chance of getting that back. And then they say, well, maybe there's another platform, maybe this, but yeah, I get it. But you're not going to, there is no comparable platform that has 100 million subscribers that you're going to get that. And everybody knows, let's say the base, like in statistics, your sampling base, this is your base. If your movie plays, you're probably only going to get about 1.1% of that base. So if you're working from a smaller base, it's less streaming, fewer viewers, and obviously no income. So that's the problem. And then I think just recently they were like, okay, well, you have to change your artwork because we don't allow the director's name on it anymore. We don't allow extra words. We don't allow anything of a woman that's in danger. She's not in danger. She's holding a gun. There's a guy facing her with a gun. She is not in danger. She's not in peril. She's not in peril. But yet we're having to either agree with it or we don't get on the platform. They just drop us like that. And they don't care because the movie means nothing to them. So that's the mode that you have to go into, and you've got to rethink everything that you're doing when you try to get into this digital game. And I know people say, "Well, I just do physical. I just do physical." I get it. I get it, and that's probably a good market for the next 3 to 5 years, maybe. And you selling 20 Blu-rays is much more than us getting 200,000 views. You know what I mean? Like to sell 20, 30 Blu-rays, we get that makes more that gets you more money than us getting 200,000 views, something like that. Because 200,000 views and they're watching a minute or 10 seconds, it's worthless. It's worthless. If they watch a minute, it's worthless, worthless. So that's the issue. This constant revision. So then, as a result, I've had to re-edit my films. I've had to sanitize them, sometimes for the better. I realize, going back that maybe some of my storytelling didn't need to be as harsh as it was. But then, if an artist keeps changing his art by what he is on a particular day, what does that mean for the stability of art? Then, if it's always susceptible to change at the whim of the artist based on his mind. Like, let's say if I go insane and I start screwing around with my movies, Is that the true movie then? Or is the true movie now, where it's being in its transition, you know? So if people are ready to do that and constantly revise and rethink and redo, I mean, it's crazy. Like there are names now that trigger that you can't. There are words you can't put into a synopsis or a description. There are actors who trigger things. They'll never tell you that they blacklisted actors, but I've been kind of pulling together a list of such names, and they're blacklisting them. Okay, if they show up in your cast list on your metadata and your SEO, you're getting suppressed, and they'll never tell you that you're getting suppressed, because they're not consciously saying, hey, suppress this man or suppress this lady. They're not saying that. They've just programmed the algorithms, so ultimately the algorithms are given a fair amount of knowledge, then they could decide, okay, suppress this guy. you know and then in doing so, the heads of the corporations can say, like, I didn't know about it, that wasn't my doing, I don't take legal responsibility for suppressing this guy. It was a computer, and the computer's this, and there would be no evidence, there'd be no forensic evidence at all to say that this person's suppressed, because what they're doing is they're just prompting. They're not saying suppress Eric Roberts, they're saying suppress somebody who would be in a 1980s action movie, who happens to be the brother of a star, and she's Oscar. That's how they prompt stuff. And then all this stuff comes up, and then you're like, what do I do? Now, if you're making a movie for 1,000, 2,000, and you have a regular job, you can afford to keep this hobby and, make a buck back here and there and throw it back in. I always tell people, like, I don't know why people are so obsessed with gadgets every year at Cinecon. They're like, oh, look at this camera, look at this lens. Oh my God, isn't that great? I said, does people care anymore? If I were you, I'd buy 3 iPhones. The iPhones shoot on they shoot Apple ProRes now. Get 3 iPhones, go shoot it. Nobody will know the difference. And in fact, the computers now at these streaming platforms, just a little secret, you guys, they like it when you shoot on the iPhone. And they can forensically sort of tell what it is, and they're giving favorable treatment to the iPhone, because what's going to happen is that Apple wants this. Apple wants to progress the iPhone into orbit, and they're increasing its usage and its technology, and especially when it comes to like editing, which they've always been good at. But if you've started noticing their AI erasing techniques and the filmic techniques and what they're doing, the audio, they always test audio first, like music, and if it works, then they apply it to other mediums. And I didn't expect that the AI music apps were going to take off so soon. So it's only a matter of time before films become. No, I could certainly see AI as a co-tool in editing. Like, I wouldn't say edit me an action movie, but I would say, listen, I want this to evoke the French Connection. Take it from this angle, take it from angle, but I would not say just make an action scene. I would actually give it specific um prompts like that. But that's what I'll have to say. And if you're willing to go along and adapt your life and your sanity and your psyche to changes what seems to be on a monthly basis, and there's no rationale for it, because you got to rationalize with the computer, then I say go for it. I think we who call ourselves serious filmmakers, it's in our blood, it's embedded, there's nothing else that we can think of doing. So it doesn't matter that you've thrown these barriers against us, we'll still have a voice to come out. And I've always said that with suppression comes, more unique voices, perhaps, because you're limited on what you could tell, so you're trying to be more creative. The 70s were like that. It was like that a lot for studio films. The 70s was a time of social upheaval, civil rights movements and stuff. So on that note, keep it warm and be strong, everybody.